So before we get started, check out the following links in the description box below as highlighted in the image shown. So you'll be able to get our past papers, our link to our official website, link to accreditations, our link to donation page, and contact details in the description. So once you'll be watching a certain video of any lesson or of any past paper, you'll be able to get all these links, and you can be able to get to download past papers, to reach to our official website. You'll be able to see links to our accreditations so that you can see which authorities have accredited us. You'll be able to reach to our donation page as well as our contact details.
Okay, welcome class. Fundamentals of Management Accounting. This is 80D Level 3 paper, and we are here to revise this paper that was done, the August 2024 paper that was done on a Wednesday of 21st. Now, we'll go straight to the question. The paper consists of 50 multiple choice questions, and we are supposed to answer by indicating A, B, C, or D, the correct answer. We are supposed to indicate the correct answer against each question. The first session will have 10 questions, and that's what we want to look at now. So we'll start. Question number 1. Agano Limited uses an overhead absorption rate of 35 shillings per machine hour. So overhead absorption rate of 35 shillings per machine hour based on 64,000 budgeted machine hours for the period. During the same period, the actual overhead expenditure amounted to 1088,750 and 60,000 machine hours. 60,000 actual machine hours were recorded as actual production. By how much was the total overhead under or overabsorbed for the period? Thank you. This is quite a straightforward question, and the first part of this question that we are supposed to do is to calculate the absorbed overhead. So that will be our first part, calculation of the absorbed overhead. After we have calculated the absorbed overhead and have the figure, we will compare this figure with the actual overhead and then see whether the total overhead was under or over absorbed, because that is what the question is all about. If by how much was the total overhead under or over absorbed. So we'll first of all calculate the absorbed overhead, then actual overhead, which we've been given in the question as 1088,750, then just compare the two and we'll be able to determine whether there is an over absorption or under absorption. So how do we compute the absorbed overhead? Absorbed overhead, the formula is overhead absorption rate multiplied by the actual machine hours. This is the formula for calculating the absorbed overhead, and all these figures we've been given. That's why I said it's quite a straightforward question. So absorbed overhead in this case will be 35 times actual machine hours, which is 60,000, and this will give us 21,000. Sorry, will give us, I've already computed, so it will give us 35 times 60,000, which is equals to 2.1. So 2.1. So this will be our absorbed overhead, 2.1 million. So then the next thing is to since we already know the actual overhead, we just compare the two, and we'll simply do the absorbed overhead. That is whether to find out whether it's an over or under absorption. So absorption overhead minus, because it's on the higher side, minus actual overhead. This will give us absorbed overhead minus actual overhead think because the terms are almost the same, let's just do the write-up so that we talk of absorbed overhead minus actual overhead, which this will give us 2.1 minus 1088,750. That gives us 2.1 minus 1088,750. That gives us 1011,250. So what is this 1011,250? Is it an under or over absorption? So you know, normally compare the absorbed overheads versus the actual overheads. When the absorbed overheads are greater than the actual overheads, it becomes an over absorption. And when actual overheads are greater than the absorbed overhead, it becomes an under absorption. So in our case, the absorbed overheads are greater than actual overheads, and so this will mean that the 1011,250 is an over absorption. Over absorption. So 1011,250 over absorption. And now we go to the answer and check. Otherwise, if the absorbed overheads were less than the actual overheads, it would have been under absorption. So let's simply go back to the question and check if we have this answer here. So we have it as C, I guess it's C. So C will be our answer, 1011,250 over absorption. That will be our answer. Over absorption occurs when the absorbed overheads exceed the actual overhead. That means that the company has absorbed more overhead than it has actually spent. We call that over absorption. So that is the answer to that question. Question 1, answer is C. Let's go to question 2. Question 2, which one of the following statements best describes a controllable cost? Now, even before looking at the multiple choices we have, a controllable cost is a cost in which the management can influence. So this is the key term that we'll be looking at as we go through the multiple choices. Can the management influence that cost? Okay, so let's look at the question. What they want is best, a statement that best describes a controllable cost. So possibly they describe, but which one best describes? So a specific, it is a specific cost of an activity or a business which will be avoided if the activity or business did not exist. This is an avoidable cost. So this is definitely not correct. A cost which arises from the decision already taken, which cannot in the short run be changed. If it cannot be changed, then it is not controllable, because remember we said that controllable can be influenced by the management decision. So if it cannot be changed in the short run, then it's not controllable. Then a cost which the behavior pattern can be easily analyzed to facilitate valid budgetary control system. Why valid budgetary control system? This one restricts this answer to no. It's neither here nor there. So I think that one leaves a lot of questions to be admired, that can raise a lot of worms. So let's just continue with our path. D, a cost which can be influenced by its budget holder. Perfect. So the answer is D, a cost which can be influenced by the budget holder. That is a controllable cost. That is a cost which can be influenced by its budget holder. And I think that's where we started. We say that it's a cost that can be influenced by the management, and in this case, budget holder possibly takes that position. So the correct answer here is D. I think the first part, I think I must have circled. Then question 3. The management director of Annex Limited, a manufacturing company, has the management accountant to coordinate the preparation of their functional budget for the next financial year. The budgets were listed as follows. So this is a functional budget. Functional budget normally, preparation of funds for the next financial year. Okay. So we have sales budget, cash budget, material purchase budget, production budget, and material usage budget. In what order should the above be prepared? In what order should the above be prepared? So the order matters a lot, because if you check all this, one budget will lead to the other. Like in this case, the budget that normally comes first to set the pace is the sales budget. This one will always come first. Why? It is prepared because it is prepared first because it is the one that determines the volumes to be produced. I mean, we have to get the demand first. After getting the demand, then we can ascertain how much to produce. How much to produce. So sales budget comes first to get the demand that is anticipated. Once we know the demand that is anticipated, we now go to preparing the production budget. How much are we going to produce? Then the next question is how many, the quantity of materials that will be required to produce or to meet the production, the quantity that we want to be, the quantity that we want, which can help meet the sales, or rather the demand that has been projected. So let me start again. What is the demand? How many items or quantities or units do we need to produce to meet the demand? Then to produce this number of units, what is the quantity of raw materials that is required? So it means that this will be the first one, then second one, then third one. The materials that will be required to meet this number of units that are supposed to be produced to meet this demand. So once we get the materials that are required, then the next question is, what is the cost of these materials for? Once we determine the cost of the materials, we prepare now the final document, which is a cash budget. A cash budget will now have the sales part. Normally we talk of the receipts and the payments. So you can see the receipts will be here, and then the payments will be here, material purchases budget. So the right order of this thing will be 1 will remain at 1, then number 2 will be 4, then number 3 will be 5, then step number 4 will be 3, and lastly step number 5 will be 2. So this will be the ideal answer. Do we have it here? 1, 4, 5, 3, 2. So this will be the ideal answer. Otherwise, if we are to start with 2, cash budget, no, we can't start with cash budget. Where will you get the sales figures when you have not prepared the sales figure? So this one is definitely no. 4, we start with production budget. You are producing to meet which demand? How, what will inform you the number of units to produce? There must be something. So this one is also definitely wrong. Definitely wrong. Then let's look at B. 1, 5, material usage. Where will you get this material usage if you've not determined the budget? I think the correct answer is C. So we stick to C. Let's go to number 4. An engineering firm operates a job costing system. Production overhead is absorbed at the rate of 8.5 per machine hour. In order to allow for non-production overhead costs and profit, a markup of 60% of prime cost is added to the production cost and preparing price estimates. The estimated requirements of job number 808 are as follows. So direct materials, we have that. Direct labor, that. Machine hours, that. The estimated price notified to the customer for job number 808 will be quite a direct one again. It's a very good question, but very direct. Let's look at the possible solution for it. An engineering firm operates a job costing system. Production overhead is absorbed at the rate of 8.5 per machine. So production overhead, just from this information, I can get the production overhead already, is 8.5 per machine. And how many hours? Per machine hour. And how many machine hours were used? 140. This figure is here, so times 140. So simply say 8.5 times 140. That gives us 1190. So production overhead 1190. A markup of 60% of prime cost is added to production cost when preparing price statement. A markup of 60% of prime cost. So what is prime cost? Prime cost is simply the direct cost. So we talk of direct materials plus direct labor plus direct expenses. In this question, we don't have direct expenses. So direct material is 10,650 plus direct labor is 3260 plus direct expenses, which you don't have. So if you add this, you will get 13,910, I believe. I've just added from my head. Yeah, 13,910. So this will be our prime cost. Now the next thing is a markup of 60% markup of 60%. So markup of 60% of prime cost 13,910. Just like that, a markup of 60% of prime cost is added to the production cost when preparing price estimates. So a markup of 60% will be 0.6 times 13,910. That gives us 8346. So then, what is the question? The estimated requirements of job number 1088. So the estimated requirement of job number 1088 will be arrived at as follows. Simply say prime cost. So let's say direct materials will be 10,650 plus direct labor will be 3260. When you add the two, get the prime costs. So the prime cost is 13,910. Then you add the production overheads, which you have already computed and gotten as 1190. So when you add that, you get total production cost. Total production cost will now be this 001 15. So 15,100. I believe I'm correct. Then we add now the markup cost. Markup will be 8346. That gives us 23,446 as our the estimated requirements for job number. So 23,446, that will be the estimated price notified to the customer for job number. So this will be the estimated price. It will be 23,446. So we've just taken the direct materials plus direct labor to get the prime cost. When you add production overhead, which we've been given in the question, machine hours 8.5 per machine hour, and how many machine hours were used. So you simply multiply the two, you get the production overhead. When you add production overhead to the prime cost, you get what we call total production cost, and then add the markup, that is the profit, rather the amount to stand in for the extra, let's just say profit. And let's just say profit. So to stand in as a profit and other possibly costs. So then we'll have an estimated price, which is 23,446. I've talked of other costs because the question talks of in order to allow for non-production overhead costs and profit. a markup of 60%. So that 60% will stand in for those to give us this 23,446. So let's go back to the and check if we have 23,446. There we go. So the correct answer will be C. Thank you. Let's go to question number 5. Kiwanja Limited has established a budgeted sales revenue amounting to 5 million with an associated contribution of 2750. The fixed price costs amount to 3750, whilst fixed selling costs amounted to 275. Calculate the break-even sales revenue. I will start by first of all just adding these fixed costs. You can see we have two fixed costs: fixed production cost and fixed selling cost. Let's add them together. 275,000. This gives us 1650, because we'll be talking about just fixed costs, so there's no point of having the two together differently. But now that we've been given them as different figures, we add them together, we get one wholesome figure like that, 1650, and proceed. So Kinywa, let's go back again to the question and see what it has for us. Kiwanja Limited had established a budgeted sales revenue amounting to 5 million with an associated contribution of 2750. The fixed production cost amounting to that and that. Calculate the break-even sales revenue. Now, how do we calculate the break-even sales revenue? How do we calculate the break-even sales revenue? Going to the formula for break-even. Now, break-even formula is break-even is equals to fixed cost over contribution margin ratio. Contribution margin ratio. This is total fixed cost. So the next, and we already know the total fixed cost, which is 1650. Then the contribution margin ratio, we've not been given directly in the question. Margin ratio, we've not been given directly in the question. But what we are going to do is to compute it, and contribution margin ratio is equal to contribution over the sales revenue. And I think we've been given all this. So contribution is 2750. It's in the question, divided by the sales revenue of 5 million. And we'll express, there's no need to express it in percentage because you are going to subject it to further analysis. So just get 2750 divided by 5500. This gives you 2750 divided by 55,000. I don't know, I'm getting there 55. 0.55. So 0.55 that will be our contribution margin ratio. So the next thing is to come back to the break-even formula, which you have it on top there. So break-even sales revenue is equals to fixed cost, which is 1650 divided by 0.55. Whatever answer we get, that will be our break-even sales revenue. Break-even sales revenue. So let's see what you're going to get. This will be 1650. 1650, of course, the 3 zeros divided by 0.55. That gives us 3 million. 3 million, and this will be in shillings. So this will be our break-even sales revenue. Break-even point is basically where we're neither making profits nor losses. The profit is 0. So it means if we make sales of 3 million, we will have level, the break even. So, do you have it somewhere? Yeah, there we go. So the correct answer will be D. D will be the correct answer. It means at a sales revenue of 3 million, we will be breaking even. The key points here: fixed cost, get the total fixed cost. Break even is equal to total fixed over contribution margin ratio. Contribution margin ratio is equal to contribution over sales revenue, and that's how you go about it. Then you go back to the formula and you get the correct answer. Okay, question 6. Mambo Enterprises produces 3 products X, Y, and Z, which have the following details. So those are the products: direct material, contribution per unit, contribution per kg of material, demand. Mambo Enterprises must produce 1,000 units of product X for a special contract before meeting normal demand. Unfortunately, there are only 35,000 kgs of materials available. Calculate the total quantity of materials needed in kgs to meet all the demand. Calculate the total quantity of materials needed in kgs to meet all the demand. Straightforward question. This one doesn't have a lot of issues. What you need to do is calculate the total quantity of materials. So materials, Mambo Enterprises produces 3 products X, Y, and Z, which have the following details. So direct materials, product X uses 8 kgs per unit. Product Y 5 kgs per unit. Those are direct materials. And then product Z 6 kgs per unit. So the question is, how many units will be produced? And I think that answer can be well seen here on the demand in units. So the units that are required for product X, short will just say product X, product Y, and product Z. Then the number of units, then kgs that make 1 unit. So how many units will be required for X? 3,000, for Y 5,000, and for Z 2,000. Kgs, how many kgs are required? How many kgs are in 1 unit of X? 8 kgs, then 5, then 6 kgs. So total kgs, if we require 3,000 units and each unit has 8 kgs, so how many units, how many kgs are we talking about? So this is 24,000, this is 25,000, and this is 12,000. So if you add, this is 49 plus 12, 61,000. So I'll say that will be our answer, 61,000 kgs. That is the total quantity of materials that we'll need, because we've been given the materials in kgs and how many kgs are required to make 1 unit. So if we have 3,000 units and 8 kgs are required per unit, then it means we will need 24,000 of product X, and that applies also to product Y and product Z respectively. So we add, we get 61,000. Let's go back to the multiple choices. Do we have 61,000? Yes, I can see it here. So we go with that as our answer. Then move to question 7. Determine the order of priority in production considering that materials in kgs are in short supply. Actually, we've been told that there are only 35,000 kgs, and in this case we are talking about 61,000 kgs. So determine the order of priority in production considering that materials in kgs are in short supply. In such like cases, we are going to work out the most profitable. We'll give priority to the most profitable. And the best way to go about this is to assign the highest number of production to the units that are more profitable, the products that are more profitable. How do we know the profitability of a product? We just go to the contribution per unit. So check on the contribution per unit. The contribution per unit for product X is 35. Then for product Y is 25. And lastly, for product Z is 48. Those are the contributions per unit. So if those are the contributions per unit, then the question is, which units do we produce first? Which units do we produce second? Which units do we produce third? Based on that, the priority. Based on the priority. Now, something again here that comes out clearly is that we have been given two routes to follow. You can choose whichever route you want to follow. There is contribution per unit and there's contribution per kg of material. So you can go either direction. But now that we are working with kgs, I think it's better we stick to kgs. So we can go with the kgs. So this will be 4.375. Product X 4.375, product Y 5, and product Z 8 shillings. That is the contribution. Contribution is what each product leaves behind. In a layman's language, as you know, the net. So what we are going to do here is the first item that we'll look at is I think we'll go straight to the contribution and use these contributions to make a decision. We'll use the contributions to make a decision. So for product Z, you can see the contribution has Z has the highest contribution. So given a chance, it means we'll go for more of Z, followed by Y, followed by X. Reason being very simple, that product Z has the highest contribution. Product Y follows it closely with 5, and product X has the least contribution. So if we were to arrange these products in the order of priority, I think most of the resources will go for the one that gives us much, and that can be well captured by the contribution. So determine the order of priority in production. Consider that materials in kgs are in short supply. We will go for definitely Z first because of the highest contribution, followed by Y, followed by X. I think this question was just that direct. I was actually trying to overthink, but looks like the question is very straight. So it doesn't really need a lot. Just use the contribution to arrive at the answer. Then some of these questions are very tricky, like that one was a little bit tricky, and you might end up overthinking. So let's go to the next item. What is the optimum production level in units based on the material available that will give maximum profit if all conditions are fulfilled? What is the optimum production level in units based on the material available that will give maximum profit if all conditions are fulfilled? So the production, how will you produce to end up with the maximum profits if all the conditions are fulfilled. Remember what we said, that product Z has the highest profits, followed by Y, followed by X. But then there's a catch somewhere here, where we were told that there must be product Z. Mambo Enterprises must produce 1,000 units of product X for a special contract before meeting normal demand. So it means here we don't have any negotiation. So 1,000 units, whether it's profitable or not. So this question is asking us the optimum production level in units based on the material available that will give maximum profit if all conditions are fulfilled. So first of all, we'll have to, the 1,000 units will have to produce this 1,000 units. It's a must for product X. And the profits that we'll get by producing this 1,000 units will simply be 1,000 units times the contribution per unit, which is 35. Contribution. Remember, now we are talking about units. We are not talking about kgs because the question is interested in units. So the contribution you are going to get is 35 per unit. So that makes it 35,000. And this 1,000 units that we are going to produce, remember 1,000 units each is made up of 8 kgs. And so how many kgs will you have utilized? 8,000 kgs. And we only have 35,000 kgs. So 35 minus 8, we are remaining with 35,000 minus 8, we are remaining with 27,000 kgs. I hope you are not confused. The 35,000 kgs is the maximum number of, unfortunately, there are only 35,000 kgs of materials available. So if we say that we must produce 1,000 units, because it's in the question. It's in the question. So these are 1,000 units. Each unit requires 8 kgs. So it means you are going to spend 8,000 kgs out of the 35,000 kgs that are available. So that means that we are left with 27,000 kgs to be distributed among the rest. But why are we producing the 1,000 units? Because it's necessary. Otherwise, we will not have produced. Why? Because X has the lowest contribution. So then, once we are done with that, because it's mandatory, now we go to the next item, which has the highest contribution. And we all agree that Z has the highest contribution. So because it has the highest contribution, let's produce the most. So Z, only 2,000 units are required. So we are going to produce all the 2,000 units. Why? Because it has the highest contribution. If you check, you will see the contribution per unit, 35, 25, 48. So it's this 48. We only produce X because it was necessary. Otherwise, we will have started with Z, which has the highest contribution. So we've started with what is mandatory, then go to the one with the highest contribution, which is that one. Now we are supposed to produce 2,000 units, and each unit will consume 6 kgs. You can see each unit has 6 kgs. So how many kgs are this? Of course, the contribution is very good at 48,000. So this is 6 kgs. It means we are going to have 2,000 times 6. This will give us 12,000 kgs that are going to be utilized to produce product X, product Z. So 27,000 minus 12,000. How many units are we having remaining? 15,000. So this 15,000 will go the next profitable, most profitable product. And in this case, the next most profitable product, as we can all see, will be product just check something here, but the next most profitable product Just a minute. Okay, so the next most profitable product, if we go back to the contribution, let's see. The next, this is XZ, then we got the next one, which is definitely contribution per unit 25, 48, 35. Contribution per kg of material 4.358. Wow. Do we use the contribution per unit or the contribution per kg of material? I had not noticed this, that we have different figures here, 35, 25, 48, but this, you can see the flow is different. The flow is different. So this will be 8, 5, and 4.375. So if we go by the contribution per kg of material, it's giving us a total difference figure from contribution per unit. If we go by contribution per unit, it is 48. It will be Z. Z will come first, followed by X, followed by Y. But if you go with contribution per kg of material, Z will come first, followed by Y, followed by X. So I think it's just a matter of determining which one. So let's go back to the question. What is the in fact, we need to check what we did here. Determine the order of priority in production considering the materials in kgs are in short supply. Yeah, this is correct. So this remains correct. Let's go to the third. What is the optimum production in units based on the materials available that will give maximum profit if all conditions are fulfilled? I think we'll stick to this. So what this means is that the third most profitable product will be Y, which will have, because of the 5 units, because of the 5 being the contribution per kg. So how many units do you have? 5,000, 3,000. Under 5 we have 5,000 units. We are going for this. Why? Because Y, the contribution per kg is 5 shillings, while the contribution per kg for X is 4 shillings. So let's go for this first before we come to this. So how many units? These are 5,000 units. 5,000 units. And each unit has how many kgs? Each unit has 5 kgs. So 5 kgs. How much? So this will give us 25,000. 25,000 kgs. But do we have 25,000 kgs? We don't have. We only have 15,000 kgs. So how many units will 15,000 kgs produce? How many units will 15,000 kgs produce? If 5 kgs produce 25,000, what of 15,000? So it will be 15 times 5, which is 75 divided by 25, which gives us, basically it's 3,000 units. So we'll talk of 3,000 units. 3,000 units. So 3,000 units, and each unit consumes 5 kgs. That means that we will have spent here how many units? 15. 15,000. 3,000 times 5, 15,000. So minus 15,000 is equals to 0. So that's how we go about it. So what it means is that 1,000 units are going to be produced. Then we'll have a balance of 27,000. Then 2,000 units of Z are going to be produced, and each unit costs 6 shillings. So 2,000 times 6 is 12,000 kgs. Minus this, we have 15,000. Then Y will produce 3,000 units of Y at 5 kgs per unit, which means we are going to spend 15,000 kgs, and that will basically finish the entire 15,000 units that we have for production. 15,000 kgs that we have for production. So this is how we are going to produce. So product A will produce 1,000, and it's because this is mandatory. Then we go to product Z, where will produce 2,000. Yeah, product A 1,000, product Z 2,000. So this is correct. And then product Y 3,000. This is correct. So the correct answer looks like is B. B will be our correct answer, with 1,000 X, 3,000 Y, and 2,000 Z. So that will be our correct answer: 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000. And the explanation is based on what will give us the maximum contribution. But before we go to the contribution bit, we have to start with what is mandatory, which is actually A. A is mandatory. Not giving us the lowest contribution, it is mandatory. It has to be produced. So we have to factor in that condition first before you can proceed with the ones that will give us maximum contribution. So let's move to question number 9. Use the following information to answer question 9 and 10. A transport service company is running 5 buses between 2 towns which are 50 kilometers apart. The seating capacity of each bus is 50 passengers. The following particulars were obtained from their books for the month of June 2024. During the month of June 2024, passengers carried was 75% of seating capacity. All buses operated on all days of the month. Each bus made 1 round trip per day. So, during the month of June 2024, the passengers carried were 75% of seating capacity. So, let's start. Seating capacity is 50 passengers. The question wants the total passenger kilometers. So seating capacity 50 passengers. And the passengers carried was 75% of seating capacity, 0.75. That's 75%. So it means the passengers carried will be 0.75 of 50. 0.75 times 50. This gives us that 7.5. And we have how many buses? Number of buses are 5. 5 buses. And the distance is 50 kilometers, but it's making 2 trips per day. All buses operated on all days of the month. Each bus made, assuming that the days of the month are 30, this will give us 100 times 30. This gives us 3,000. 3,000. 50 kilometers times 2, because the buses made only one trip return. So 50 to go, 50 coming back. So this gives it 100 kilometers per day times 30 days in a month. That gives us 3,000 kilometers. 3,000 kilometers per bus for 30 days. So if we want to get, this is 3,000 kilometers per bus for 30 days. If we want to get for the 5 buses, then it will be 3,000 kilometers per bus for 30 days times the 5, which will give us 15,000. 15,000 kilometers. So that is 15,000 for all the 5 buses. Yeah, 15,000 kilometers. And that is for all the 5 buses. For all the 5 buses in a month. I hope we are together. Distance covered, 50 kilometers to go to town, 50 kilometers to come back. Each bus makes one trip per day. So it means every day a bus travels for 100 kilometers. Times 30 days, we get 3,000 kilometers per bus. Then because we have 5 buses, 3,000 times 5, we have 15,000 kilometers for all the buses in a month. The question is, what is the total passenger kilometer? So it means we simply multiply the number of passengers, which is 37.5, times kilometers covered in a month, which is 15,000, and we'll be able to get the passenger kilometer in total. So this will be 37.5 times 15,000. That gives us 562,500. 562,500. Sorry, it's not shillings. 562,500. So let's just go to the, see if we have such like an answer. Yes, we have it, A. So A will be the answer to that question. Okay, let's go to question 10, which is the last part of this session. What is the cost per passenger kilometer? Cost per passenger kilometer. So we already have the passenger kilometer is 562,500. The cost you simply add all this and we'll be done. So we simply add all this. So this will be 480 plus 232.5 plus 700, 860. I've added the 2 plus I've added this plus this. This is 840, 1240, 1240. That gives us 2812,500. 2812,500. 2812,500. So simply divide the 2. So 2812,500 divide by 562.5. That gives us 5. So the answer will be 5. That will be the cost, because it's shillings, 5 shillings per passenger kilometer. Do you have it? C. So C will be our answer for that question. Thank you. That's how we go about answering this. That was the first session with 10 questions. Thank you. Let's meet in the next session.
So if you like this video, you can always enroll with us. You'll be able to access more of these revision sessions. And also you'll be able to find well done lectures or pre-recorded videos for all the KASNEB courses as well as CHRP. And in case of anything, you can always reach us out. We have our contact details on the screen. Feel free to call, feel free to WhatsApp anytime. So thank you, and let's meet in our next session.